I didn't know he was still alive. That's the line that's haunted me the most. That I, his favorite grandchild, the one who used to draw him pictures of rocket ships and label them Papa's Ride, hadn't even known my grandfather was still breathing when I finally heard his voice again, through a cracked door in a hallway that smelled like bleach and abandonment. It was so weak I almost didn't recognize it. But then he said my name. Just my name. And I swear, it was the first time in years I felt like someone actually saw me. We used to be close. Closer than I was with either of my parents. Honestly, my dad, his son, died when I was 12 in a car accident. After that, Grandpa sort of stepped in. Not legally, not in a courtroom way, but in the way that mattered. He showed up. Every single parent-teacher meeting, every school play, every Saturday with pancakes and stories from the war, he swore were mostly lies. He had this laugh that could break up any fight, and this way of holding your gaze that made you feel like nothing else mattered but what you were saying right then. But when I went off to college, things got harder. My mom remarried, moved. My Aunt Karen, Dad's sister, took over handling Grandpa's affairs, so he wouldn't be a burden. That was her phrase. I remember it exactly. She said it on Thanksgiving, over mashed potatoes, like she was doing the world a favor. "He's just too much to handle now," she said, with her wineglass tilted like she was the hero of some made-for-TV drama. I should have asked more questions then, but I was caught up in my own mess. New city, new job, a breakup that left me staring at the ceiling fan every night like it held the answers to my life. I called Grandpa on his birthday, but it went to voicemail. I texted. Nothing. I figured maybe he was tired. Maybe he was mad I hadn't visited. Or maybe Karen had taken him somewhere nice and quiet, like she said she would. Turns out, quiet was an understatement. What I didn't know, what I would later find out through the most shameful game of detective work I've ever played, was that Karen had stuck him in a nursing home 2 hours outside the city. A place with gray walls, peeling linoleum, and one nurse for every dozen forgotten souls. No visits, no check-ins, just a monthly withdrawal from his pension and the occasional photo on Facebook to keep up appearances. She had blocked his number. From me. From everyone. The first time I realized something was wrong was when I went to mail a birthday card to his old address and it came back stamped, "Return TO sender. No forwarding address." That was it. That was the moment the guilt started clawing at my throat like a feral thing. Why hadn't I pushed harder? Why had I let Karen's smug little updates fool me into thinking everything was fine? I went back through my phone, all the missed calls, all the voicemails that had somehow never shown up, until I found one. One message, hidden in the depths of my Google Voice archive, like it had been buried on purpose. "Hey kiddo, it's me. I don't think this phone works anymore. I tried calling. I just wanted to hear your voice. It's been a while. I miss you." He sounded scared. No one warns you how terrifying it is to hear fear in the voice of the person who raised you. It unravels something ancient in your chest. Something primal. I called the number back. Disconnected. I tried again. And again. Then I started Googling. Calling nursing homes. Lying through my teeth. Pretending I was a social worker just trying to find a relative. Took me 4 days to find him. For days, 3 screaming matches with Karen, and 1 complete emotional breakdown in a Walgreens parking lot. When I walked into that nursing home, he didn't even look up at first. He was thinner, smaller, like life had wrung him out and left the shell behind. But then I said, "Papa," and his eyes met mine, and he cried. Just hearing my voice made him cry. That was when I knew something had broken. Not just in him, in me, in all of us. I wish I could say I stormed into that nursing home like some avenging angel, demanding justice and apologies and signatures on release forms. But I didn't. I sat there, shaking, while he held my hand like he was afraid I'd vanish if he blinked too long. His fingers were colder than I remembered, and thinner, like the world had chipped away at him piece by piece while I wasn't looking. We didn't speak for a while. Just sat there. He kept mouthing "you came," over and over again like it was too good to be true. When he finally found words, they came out in a quiet trickle. "I thought you forgot me," he said. That line cracked me open in a way nothing else had. Worse than heartbreak. Worse than grief. I hadn't just let him get old alone. I had let him think I chose to forget him. So I asked him. I asked what happened. How long he'd been there. Why I hadn't heard from him. And that's when the story unraveled. It started small, he said. After he had a fall in the garden. Just a sprained ankle. Karen insisted he couldn't live alone anymore. She took his house keys. Sold the car. He was told it was temporary. A little rest, some monitoring. That word again. But weeks turned into months. And the temporary facility became his new reality. He didn't want to worry me, he said. He figured I was busy with my life. He knew I'd come eventually. That I'd find him. But the worst part? He had a phone. For a while. A little flip phone he'd kept hidden in a sock drawer in his room. And he called me. Almost every day. Just to hear my voicemail. To say good morning. To say happy birthday. He left messages he was never sure went through. But then one day the phone disappeared. A nurse told him Karen had it deactivated for safety reasons. She told the staff he had no remaining family. She told them I had blocked him. I wish I could say I was surprised. But the more I thought about it, the more the pieces started making a sick kind of sense. Karen always had this subtle way of controlling the room, polite but firm. She didn't yell. She didn't threaten. She just made decisions for people before they realized there was a choice. And somehow the rest of us let her. I remembered how after Dad died, she took over the funeral arrangements without asking anyone. How she cut off friends she didn't approve of. How she used to say Grandpa's quirky stories were signs of senility. Even when he remembered more than the rest of us combined. She always wanted to be the center. Of attention. Of power. Of control. Grandpa was inconvenient. A relic of a past she wanted to rewrite. So she did what she always does. She rewrote it. This time by erasing him. I went back to my apartment that night and cried harder than I have in years. Ugly crying. The kind where your throat burns and you can't breathe. I looked through old photos, birthdays, fishing trips, the time he taught me how to ride a bike in the rain because some things are better when you're already soaked. And then I found the voicemail again. Hey kiddo, I just wanted to hear your voice. I played it 23 times before I fell asleep. And when I woke up the next morning, I wasn't just sad anymore. I was angry. The thing about anger is that it doesn't come all at once. Trickles in. Quiet at first. It seeps into the cracks left by grief, grows roots in the guilt, then blooms into something sharp enough to cut through the numbness. By the time I was brushing my teeth that morning, it wasn't just a bad feeling anymore. It was a purpose. I called Karen. Straight to voicemail. I texted. We need to talk. It's about Grandpa. No response. That's when I did something I never thought I'd do. I showed up at her front door. The last time I'd been there was Christmas 3 years ago. She'd given me a pair of socks and a lecture about career planning. Now, I was standing on the same welcome mat, fists clenched so hard my knuckles turned white. She opened the door like she didn't even remember who I was. Oh, she said. You're in town. You blocked his number. I said. You put him in a place that smells like rot and regret. You told people he didn't have family. You told him I blocked him. Her face didn't move. Not an inch. She let out this tiny breath, like a sigh mixed with annoyance, and stepped aside. Come in. We're not doing this on the porch. Inside, her house looked the same. Clean, curated, cold. Like a magazine page someone forgot to crumple. We sat at her kitchen table, and for the first time, she didn't lead the conversation. I want to know why, I said. She folded her arms. Because no one else was going to deal with him. You think it's easy, caring for someone like that? He was slipping. He kept asking where your dad was. He'd forget what day it was. He called you over and over again. He was becoming a burden. He was lonely, I snapped. He was grieving. He was delusional, she said. I did what needed to be done. There it was. That perfect Karen sentence. Cold. Self-righteous. Final. You could have called me, I said. You could have asked for help. I would have come. She looked away. No, you wouldn't have. she said quietly. You were gone. You always said you'd visit and then never did. You sent a card once a year. That's not showing up. That hit harder than I expected. Because there was truth in it. I had distanced myself. I had disappeared into my own life. And in the space I left behind, she took over. Twisted reality. Spun her version of the truth and tucked him away like an old sweater that didn't fit anymore. But still, I didn't deserve the chance to try? I said. You decided for me. You stole that choice. Karen stared at me for a long time. Then, in the softest voice I've ever heard her use, she said, he started calling out for your dad in his sleep. Every night. I couldn't listen to it anymore. He sounded like a child. I didn't know what to do. And for a brief second I saw it. Not the cold-hearted villain I'd been building in my head, but a tired woman with her own unresolved grief, drowning in something she never asked for. But sympathy isn't the same as forgiveness. I'm taking him out of there, I said. He deserves to know he wasn't forgotten. Karen didn't argue, didn't offer to help. She just nodded, slow and quiet, and said, good luck. And just like that, the battle lines were drawn. I didn't expect the resistance. Maybe I was naive. Maybe I thought once I made the decision, everything else would fall into place. But taking someone out of a nursing home is a lot harder than putting them in. There were papers, guardianship forms, medical reviews, mental competency evaluations. The staff looked at me like I was a stranger storming a castle. One nurse pulled me aside. She was kind but tired, the kind of tired that lives behind the eyes. Your aunt has power of attorney, she said. Unless that changes, our hands are tied. I wanted to scream, to rip the whole system apart and throw it in Karen's perfectly labeled recycling bins. But instead, I sat in Grandpa's room every evening, holding his hand, reading him news articles, feeding him pudding he didn't like, and promising him that I was not going away again. He told me stories. Some I'd heard 100 times. Others were new, or maybe I'd just forgotten them. One night, as he drifted between sleep and memory, he said, your dad used to cry when he scraped his knees, but he always ran again. That line hit me like a slap, because I was scraping my knees now, running into a wall I wasn't sure I could break. So I did the only thing I had left. I told the internet. I posted on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit. I told our story. About the blocked number. About the nursing home. About the voicemail. I uploaded a photo of me and Grandpa. Him smiling, frail, with my hand wrapped around his like a lifeline. I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for pity. I just wanted people to see him. And then it happened. It went viral. Overnight, my inbox exploded. Comments, shares, messages from strangers telling me their own horror stories about isolated elders and greedy relatives. Nurses who'd seen it. Grandkids who regretted it. People offered legal advice. One woman, a retired eldercare attorney, said she'd help me pro bono. This happens more than you think, she wrote. But most don't fight. I fought, filed paperwork, challenged the guardianship, collected every voicemail, text, birthday card, every scrap of proof that Grandpa wasn't alone, that he was loved. Karen found out. Of course she did. She showed up at the nursing home. Hair perfect, lipstick perfect, smile like a politician. You've humiliated me, she hissed, cornering me near the visitor's desk. You made this public. You made it private when it should have never been hidden, I said. You don't know what you're doing, she snapped. You think love is enough? It's not. He's sick. He needs care. You're playing hero for strangers on the internet. I looked her in the eye. I'm not playing anything. I'm just finally showing up. Then she did something I'll never forget. She slapped me, right there in front of Grandpa's room. It wasn't hard. It wasn't violent. But it was enough. The nurse who'd spoken to me earlier stepped in. Security was called. Karen was escorted out. Grandpa heard the commotion. When I came back in, shaken, he looked at me, eyes glassy, and said, You okay, kiddo? I nodded. And he whispered, "Then it's worth it." Karen filed a restraining order against me. The same woman who blocked Grandpa's phone, lied to a nursing home, and erased me from his life, now claimed I was harassing her and stirring online hate. The document arrived 2 days after the slap, delivered in a thick white envelope, tucked under my door like a ghost's calling card. I remember holding it, feeling numb, not angry, not even surprised, just tired. The post I made kept spreading. News outlets picked it up. One local journalist even came to the nursing home and asked to interview Grandpa. I said no. He didn't need flashing cameras. He needed a family. But the pressure worked. Whether it was the legal momentum, the public outrage, or just the sheer weight of truth, something cracked. Karen's lawyer reached out quietly, said they were willing to relinquish guardianship if I agreed to de-escalate the situation. It wasn't justice, but it was a door. With the attorney's help, I filed for temporary guardianship. The process wasn't quick, but it moved. Each week I brought Grandpa updates. He smiled more. He ate more. He even laughed once. This dry, wheezing chuckle that made me tear up on the spot. "You were always the brave one," he told me. "Even when you were 5 and told your teacher her lesson was boring." I moved him into my apartment on a temporary release while the court processed everything. We set up a small room with plants and old jazz records. He loved sunlight, said it reminded him of Sunday mornings when my dad was still alive. But not everyone approved. Some of my own extended family messaged me privately. "She was just trying to help. You made this mess too public. You should have handled this quietly." Quietly, like silence hadn't been the problem all along. My mom stayed mostly out of it. Called once to say she was proud, but worried. I told her not to worry. I was already too far in to stop. And then came the nursing home bill. Karen had been draining Grandpa's account to pay for a private room, daily laundry service, and medical consultations he never received. Thousands of dollars gone. And worse, she'd listed herself as a paid caretaker. Every month she wrote herself a check. I confronted her, through the lawyer, through a formal letter. She responded with a single sentence. "You don't know what I sacrificed. And maybe I didn't. Maybe I'll never know what led her down that road. What cracked in her heart that made her see Grandpa as a chore instead of a man." But I knew one thing. She wasn't taking him back. The day the guardianship became official, I came home with a printed certificate in a cheap frame. I handed it to Grandpa, and he held it like it was a war medal. "I guess I'm yours now," he said. "You always were," I whispered. But even in that moment of victory, something inside me ached. Because I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd arrived too late. Grandpa died 8 months later. It was quiet, peaceful if there's such a thing. He was sitting by the window, jazz playing softly from a speaker, sunlight spilling over the rug like honey. I had gone to make tea. When I came back, his eyes were closed, his hands folded, a faint smile resting on his face, like he'd finally made peace with the world. I stood there, holding a mug that suddenly felt too heavy to lift. The grief didn't hit all at once, came in strange waves. I waited for the sobbing collapse, the floor-cracking devastation. But instead, I just sat beside him for a long time, holding his hand, thanking him, whispering, "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." That was the worst part. Even after all the court victories, after bringing him home, after fighting tooth and nail, what I felt most wasn't pride. It was regret. Regret for the years I lost, the birthdays I missed, the voicemails I never heard, the slow erosion of a man who once built toy planes with me in the garage while telling stories of love and war and simpler times. The funeral was small. His request. "No show," he'd said. "Just music and whiskey and someone saying something honest." So I did. I stood in front of a dozen people, half of whom barely knew him, and said the only thing that felt right. He loved without asking for anything back. And we failed him. But he forgave us anyway. Karen didn't come. She sent a short note. "Sorry for your loss." That was it. No apology. No confession. Just 7 typed words that felt like an insult stapled to an obituary. Afterward, I boxed up his things. Each object felt like a memory disguised as clutter. His old watch still ticking. A handkerchief with my initials embroidered from when I was 8. Letters he never mailed. Photos of Dad. One faded and bent, of the three of us at the lake, when life still felt big and wide and possible. I keep it on my nightstand now. Some days I still hear his voice. Not in a haunting way, more like a nudge. Like when I second-guess myself or feel lost or can't sleep. Sometimes it's just his laugh. Other times it's that voicemail, echoing in my mind. I just wanted to hear your voice. I never deleted it. Never will. People on the internet still message me sometimes. Tell me their stories. Ask what they should do with their own aging parents, forgotten grandparents, aching guilt. And I always say the same thing. Call them now. Don't wait. Don't think time will slow down just because you feel busy or young or distracted. Love them in the moment, because someday you'll be sitting by a window, sunlight warming an empty chair, holding a mug that suddenly feels too heavy, and wishing for one more voicemail.
If you made it this far, you're officially part of the drama. Subscribe for more, and tell me in the comments, what would you have done?